Okay, so I decided I want to be a rapper. I steal the $25. I go and make my little whack demo tape. I send them out to record companies, send them out to I don't even think Sleeping Bag Records was in effect at that time, but they may have been. Send them out to Tommy Boy, Def Jam, Sleeping Bag Records, Sutra Records, as I said, Profile Records, so on and so forth. So this time I'm real heavy into hip hop, and I'm still making my little cassettes for my cousins, uh, taping the Eric B. and Rakim first album, Paid in Full. I have that album on tape. Like I said before, I have the Bigger and Deffer album on tape that I listen to a lot. The I think the Just Ice, his second album, I had that on the back of the LL Cool J album. I listened to that a lot. His album with Going Way Back, that was a dope single that they released at that time. So let's fast forward into the summer of 1988. By this time, I had met this little guy named Corey. I told him I was a rapper. He said, "Hey, I got my cousin. He's a DJ. So you need to go over to his house and start getting with him, and you guys can, see what you can do, make some demo tapes or whatever." So I gets with Mark. His name is Mark. Mark is a quiet kind of guy. He's trying to DJ and trying to scratch and things like that. He's kind of in the middle of becoming good, sort of whack, but he has this thing that helps him transformer scratch, where he has this little knob where he can pinch it, and it helps him transformer scratch really well because the knob is only going from like a space of a quarter of an inch from to shut off to shut on, so he can really transformer scratch with it. So that helped him with his transformer scratching. But I mean, safe to say, he was a whack DJ. wasn't really the greatest. But I have some tapes of him scratching on there of some songs that we did in his basement that we put together on the little Casio sampler that we had that actually was used on some actual records that I found out, like on the First De La Soul album. Prince Paul had the same sampler. You could hear the lion roar once you push the yellow keypad that he used. So he used that same sampler to make some actual real hip hop records that were released on the market. So we were right there on the cusp of being in the making full-fledged productions. But anyway, this is the time that I really got into hip hop. So from Mark, this is where I started. That summer, I remember I went and asked my mom one morning. I woke up Saturday morning and asked her, could I buy a stereo system? Because we didn't have a stereo system. All I had was my cassette box. And I think my cassette box was starting to get old at the time. So she gave me like $100, and I went and bought a Sound Design double cassette kind of stereo component system, which had the turntable on top. It had the two double cassettes and the two stand-up speakers on the side. So from there, then I started making a collection of tapes. I would get Memorex yellow, I think they were yellow Memorex tapes, 90-minute tapes, and I would go and collect albums. So once I got with Mark, I went over to his house and I taped EPMD Strictly Business album. I had that on one tape. On the other side of that tape, I had the Colors soundtrack to the Colors movie soundtrack with the Colors song by Ice-T and some other songs. I taped from my cousin the Bismarcky Is Going Off album with the Vapors on there. I also taped the Fresh Prince, the DJ Jazzy Jeff and Fresh Prince album, which was called He's the DJ, I'm the Rapper. I put that on tape. I taped from somewhere. I had taped Public Enemies, It Takes the Nations of Millions to Hold Us Back. I had Salt and Pepper's second album, Assault with the Deadly Pepper. I had Big Daddy Kane, Long Live the Kane. What else? I had Eric B. and Rakim's second album, Follow the Leader. I had like 12 tapes, and what I would do, because I guess I was just a systematical, detailed type of guy, is I had 12 spaces within the cassette pullout where you can keep your cassettes on the Sound Design component set. So I would listen to each tape fully, one at a time. So I would listen to Eric B. and Rakim, and then I would switch that tape over to the last tape and move the other 12, 11 tapes up. And then I would listen to Big Daddy Kane. And on the B side of Big Daddy Kane, I can't forget what I had, but then I would listen to that whole 90-minute tape, and then I would move that tape to the end, move the other 11 up, and I would listen to it that way, one after the other. Now, when you think about it, this summer of 1988 is what I call the greatest summer of hip-hop music ever. Did you hear the list of the artists that I named? You had Public Enemy, It Takes the Nations of Millions to Hold Us Back. One of the greatest hip hop albums to ever be released. Classic albums ever. I had that album. I had Long Live the King, Big Daddy Kane's first album with Raw, R-A-W. Long Live the King, which was party people in the place. Embrace the bass as I commence to pick up the pace to make you motivate and accelerate. Cause like Tony the Tiger, I'm great. You know, you had that album with Big Daddy Kane going off on there. You had Biz Markie. He had some joints on his album, some nice production. You had the Color soundtrack, Colors. You had DJ Jazzy Jeff and the Fresh Prince. That album had a lot of great production on it. Pick Up the Pace and what was their single? Hey yo Jeff, I forget the name of it, but they had a really great single on that album that I really liked a lot. Yeah, and you could see the people dancing and shaking and moving and running and bending and jumping while the beatbox was moving and so that song, but that album was really great also. So these were like my first albums that I really studied and really got into. Like those were great albums that really had a great influence on me. And this started like a great collection. I still have those albums today. I have all of my albums that I ever put on cassette, that I ever taped from anybody, that I ever bought. And then I started buying albums myself during this time. I think I bought from RBG's. I had, probably not that summer, but along within this year, I had Kid and Play's album, It's Too Hype, which, by the way, it turned out to be like, it was a half whack album and a half good album, because it had like 4 songs on there that were really, really great, and then it had another 4 or 5 songs that were really, really horrible. So like one of the great songs was Getting Funky. And when you think about Getting Funky, I just recently listened to it, and what made that album, that song so funky is because Herbie used 2 break beats. He used the funky drummer, and then he used another break beat with it, and some James Brown song. So that song was really, really crazy. And then they released this crazy video where they were dancing. They had the Benzes parked in the video, and they had the whole crews in the back and in the front and in the middle just doing crazy dance steps. The camera was cutting to them dancing, and so that was like a crazy influential album. The Kid and Play 2 Hype album. And I actually saw them in concert in Youngstown at the Standby Auditorium. They came there and they performed that album. I don't think they brought anybody with them, but I saw them in concert doing that year. And like, to just think about the Public Enemy album was just non-stop pleasure of hip hop. Don't believe the hype, don't. Then you had Flavor Flav with this crazy whack freestyle song, Flavor Flav, the flavor's all flavor, onions, french fries, mashed potatoes. So but the whole album as a whole, the what is it called? Something about chaos, where it said, I got a letter from the government the other day. I opened and read it. It said they were suckers. They wanted me for the army or whatever. Picture me giving a damn. I said never. Here is a land that never gave a damn about a brother like me and myself, because they never did. And just Chuck's voice like had me. His voice had me so much where I swore up and down that Chuck was the greatest rapper ever. And it wasn't that he was the greatest rapper ever. And now, don't get me wrong, he was a great rapper, but his voice. See, I was influenced by beats and I was influenced by voice, which is one of the reasons why, if you ask me who was my greatest MC of all time, I would tell you KRS-One. Now, as I'm thinking about this more and more and going back and listening to his albums, it wasn't even that he was the greatest rapper. He was a very, 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 very good rapper. Yes, he was. But back at that time, if you listen to the lyrics of Rakim, and the lyrical, cadences and the way that, and the delivery of Big Daddy Kane, they were really doing it better than KRS-One. But what had me with KRS-One was his voice. He had that presence in his voice and that cockiness in his rhyme delivery. And then he just had so many styles that he delivered rhymes with, and he could battle and he could destroy you with the battle rap, and his lyrics were just crazy on point, and the boogie down production, the beats were nice. Like I said, I was a beat guy, so if your beats weren't on point, you didn't have a chance with me. if you had great beats, like for an example, in 1991, I said that the Afros album, this is actually in the Source magazine, where in a little blurb in the Source where I busted out the Five Mics guys. I said, you give an album like Brand Nubian, All for One, Five Mics, but you don't give a great album like the Afros, like but two mics. And that was because the production, as far as I was concerned, like the beats were like just more funky, and you could vibe to them better on that Afros album than you could on the All for One album. Now, eventually, the All for One album, because of my friends, that album really, really grew on me, and it's really a classic album, and I really love it. I still listen to it today. I still have it on my iPod, so that's a great album. But at the time, when I'm thinking illogically about beats, because some of the beats on the like the best beat to me on the time when I first heard All for One was the Slow Down song. Like that was the best beat on the album. And if you listen to that beat, that's like the more conventional kind of funky. That was just me. I just like the funk. That's why I like those early Sugar Hill records, because they were just so funky and musical. You got the bass line strumming at the right places. You got the drummers on point. You got the horns coming in, the bugles and whatever else, and it's just all just meshing together. And then the MCs are on there, flipping styles, going back and forth and back, and the hip hop cadences. So that was just me. I just like a funky, nice, smooth production. And to go back to this time of the summer of '88, you had the EPMD, their first album. Of course, the crazy single, You Got to Chill, Chill. And then the crazy Roger Troutman, More Bounce to the Ounce beat. And that just had me just locked in. And their album was crazy funky. The first song on the album, Strictly Business, had the crazy loop of I don't even know where that loop came from, but that song was just crazy funky for a first intro, like throwaway song, an album filler song. And then you had You're a Customer, when that's coming bumping through your stereo, and that was crazy funky. The Steve Martin, and like that was a crazy album, EPMD Strictly Business album of that summer. So that was like a really great summer. And to add to that, you had two great R&B albums at the time, which were Guy, their first album, which was titled Guy, and then you had Keith Sweat with his album Make It Last Forever. Now, I wasn't a great R&B guy, but I didn't even really like the Guy album all that much. I really, really loved the Keith Sweat Make It Last Forever album. That album was a much more better, classically smooth, funky, musical album that Teddy Riley produced for Keith Sweat. He actually produced the album for Guy too, but I think the Keith Sweat album was better than the Guy album. When I listen to them now, they're both great albums. I both have them in my collection. They're both on my iPod, and I still listen to them equally the same at this time. But at that time, Keith Sweat was definitely my favorite of those two albums. But those were some really, like the summer of 1988 was just the greatest R&B and hip-hop musical summer that I can recall in my life. Because you had all of those hip-hop albums, and then to top it off, you had the R&B albums, that your girl might want to listen to. She wanted to listen to Guy, Piece of My Love, and she wants to listen to Keith Sweat, Make It Last Forever, and Girl, I've been thinking about you all day long, don't stop your love. So you had the Keith Sweat album rocking. That was just like a great musical summer. You're going outside, and all of the cars, the drug dealers riding by in the hood, they're bumping EPMD, they're bumping Keith Sweat, they're bumping Guy, they're bumping Public Enemy is constantly getting bumped. You had BDP's album, By All Means Necessary, which was just, everybody loves Criminal Minded, but let me tell you, By All Means Necessary is my favorite BDP KRS-One album, period. When I listen to Criminal Minded even today, the production seems a little scatty, the production seems a little amateurish and beginner-like. But on that second album was where it really got cleaned up. Scholar Rock was funky. If you listen to the album Criminal Minded, what it seems like is that all of the songs were old on that album, except Scholar Rock was a super hoe, and the song Criminal Minded. Those seem like two freshly minted produced songs on that album, while the rest of the songs were old. And they just threw those two new songs on there and released the album, and everybody called it a classic album. I didn't think so at the time. I still do not think so. I think that the Public Enemy By All Means Necessary album is a much greater, much classic, much funkier, much tighter produced album. So that was a really, really great summer. That's when I really, really started collecting hip hop and studying hip hop and just loving hip hop. And then you get into MTV Raps from there, and it just grows on and on and on. We'll talk about that in my next segment.